So this is the one that was sticking. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove. $119,000 miles. It's a 2012 Ford Fiesta, and everybody knows that these 2011 and up Ford Fiestas and Ford Focuses have major transmission issues, and well, to some people it's major issues. To me, I actually feel like it's an easy fix, and that's what I'm gonna do is show exactly what happens to these transmissions. A lot of times it's the TCM, transmission control module, but it's not always the case. Sometimes it's the actuator. There's a A and a B. A is for forward gears, B is for reverse, and those engage the clutch. And then there's another problem with these. This car, actually, I picked it up a few days ago off Facebook Market, and it actually drives with no problems. And then once it heats up, it starts shifting weird, and to a point to where I barely made it home. So that being said, the vehicle has no codes, and I finally was able to trigger a code when I was pulling up to the house, and the code says clutch A stuck engaged. That means that the shift forks are stuck engaged in the clutch. So I've messed with at least 20 to 30 of these Focuses in the last few months. I just, you know, been buying them, flipping them and stuff like that, and I've noticed that the biggest issue, if there's no TCM problem or actuator problem, the biggest issue is the dust from the clutch over time collects inside the transmission housing, and it gets the clutch forks really dusty, and there's buildup in there. And what happens is, physically, these forks, they don't move back and forth. So I'm gonna show you guys what that looks like. I'm gonna take this transmission off right now. Might do like a time lapse. I'm not gonna show you how to remove the transmission, but I want to show you exactly what's going on inside there. And a lot of times, 99% of the time, what you can do is you can just clean those up with like brake cleaner, and just lube them up, and they'll be fine. I don't know for how long, but you know, it's pretty much just like replacing it. If there's nothing wrong with the fork, you can just get away with replacing it, or get away with cleaning it. Of course, if it fell apart, then you're done. But a lot of times there's just buildup, and they just don't move back and forth. So stay tuned, and let's get this transmission out. Also, I'm recording this video at home, and it's super cold outside lately here in North Carolina, so I have my trusty heater here. This thing heats up quick. Like within 20 minutes I'll probably be shirtless, who knows. So don't get scared if I take my shirt off. But I'm gonna lift up this car, put some jack stands under it, and get this transmission out. On the Fiestas, I like to remove the engine oil pan to get to those clutch flywheel bolts, flex plate bolts, whatever it's called, but it's easier to do it that way. On the Focus, I actually remove the intake manifold and get the starter out, and I can get to those bolts that way. So these transmissions are not exactly the same as far as housing on the Fiesta and Focus, but as far as like the clutch, I believe everything's the same, and the forks are the same. It's just the way the starter mounts on the Fiesta, because it's a 1.6 compared to a 2.0, it's a little bit different housing. So I think you can use the clutches. Fiesta, Focus are the same, but housings are different, so keep that in mind if you're buying a used transmission. Which, by the way, these transmissions, they typically never fail as far as like gears. It's most of the time the forks, the clutch, the actuators, or the TCM. And the TCMs are under recall. I think the clutch is too. A lot of times what happens is, though, what they do is they'll replace your clutch but not clean or replace your forks, so you have the same problem within a few weeks or months, you know. So you gotta at least clean up the forks. And so let's just get to work and go from there. It's always nice when the previous owner leaves you the key for your lug nuts, so you don't have to ruin any sockets or have to go and search for the right key. Shout out to the previous owner. So about 45 minutes into the job so far, and I've got, you know, the battery tray out, the air box out, everything up here. One thing I did notice on this car is someone already removed the transmission at some point, possibly at the dealer, or who knows, because a lot of the bolts are stripped, like the heads are stripped, and also there's 2 bolts up here that were missing, holding the transmission to the engine. So I hate working on cars that somebody already messed with, because of stuff like this. Who knows what else, what kind of surprises I'll run into. But under here, I wanted to show, this is only on Fiestas though, maybe on the Focus too, but on the Fiestas I like to take the oil pan down, which is only, you know, 10-12 bolts, and you take the oil pan down and you can get to the flywheel bolts much easier, and then when it comes time to reinstall the transmission, you can line it up much easier than going through the starter hole. Especially on the Fiesta, it's really hard to get your tools in that hole where the starter is, and it's almost impossible to see it because of where the starter is. It's somewhere up there. Yeah, so this is much easier. Just take the oil pan down. You probably have to change the engine oil. It's probably time anyways, and yeah, let's get those bolts or the nuts off. And the transmission's basically held by 2 mounts, and it's ready to come down. So we'll take a look at that clutch. As soon as I took the oil pan off, this area opened up and I can smell burnt clutch already, so I can imagine what the forks and everything looks like in there because of all the buildup over the years. So stay tuned and let's check this out. So just like that, in about an hour, this transmission is out of the car. And honestly, I think this is probably my record timing, especially at home in these conditions, basically without a lift, just on some jack stands, and I have a few extra jack stands under there just in case, so it doesn't fall over. The engine is slightly tilted, it's hanging on the motor mount over there, and it's supported, but it smells like clutch in here, so I'm guessing that you know, it's legit stuck, and it looks like it's been replaced. So when was it replaced? I'm not sure. I don't think there's any evidence of when it was replaced, but there is some writing on it, and like I said earlier, there was some missing bolts. Basically, the top bolts that hold the transmission to the engine were missing. So right now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the actuator B and actuator A out, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull this clutch out. And I forgot to mention at the very beginning that this doesn't really cost anything to do as far as like buying parts just to clean the forks, the clutch forks, but you are required to have some tools, and I'll show you in a minute what tools are required. Basically, there's 2 different types of tools. There's one to reset the clutch, because when you buy the clutch it's already preset, but if you remove this clutch and you want to reinstall it, which in this case I will because it's a good clutch has no issues, I'll have to reset the clutch. So there's a tool for that, and there's a tool to reinstall it, press it back in. There's a C-clip in there, and blah blah blah, this and that. So we'll go over all of that, I guess, as we go. I'll try to show as much as I can. My main thing about this video is to show you what the forks look like after, you know, some time. Looks like this clutch has been replaced. The car has 119,000 miles at the moment, so I'm not sure when it was replaced, but I know that the forks are sticking, so they're possibly original or they're dirty. So stay tuned. So technically you're supposed to replace these clips every time you remove this. In this case I'm going to reuse them, so I'm going to be very careful on how I remove them. And if they're removed properly and you don't bend it, I don't see why you couldn't reuse it. There's been times where I actually, not this one, but the one that's under here, I bent it and I couldn't use it, so luckily I had another one at the time. But wow, I hate the smell of the burnt clutch. It's crazy. So this clip here, as long as you can remove it carefully and not hit your eye, especially. I think it took me longer to remove that clip than to remove the transmission off the car, honestly. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it takes a while, but yeah, so now that the clip is out, I was able to save it. It's not bent or anything, so I'll be able to reuse it. That's the good news. Now, I do have the tool to go ahead and lift this, but I just like to pry it like this. Sometimes it goes, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends how this thing was installed. Looks like I might have to use the tool. So yeah, let's show some tools. So these are the tools that I'm going to be using to remove the clutch, reset it, and reinstall it. So this is the tool you need to remove the clutch and reinstall it. And that's the tool that you need to reset the old clutch. If you're reusing your clutch, you need that tool. If you just reinstall it, it's not gonna work. So both of these tools, I think combined, were about $350 to $400. I don't remember exactly, but it's under $400 for sure. So you need both of them. That being said, that's the only money you will be spending on this job. So comment below how much a job like this will cost at the dealer. I'm guessing $2,000 to $3,000. If you can spend $350 to $400 on some tools and maybe a few cans of brake cleaner, you can save your car and save some money. So look into getting these tools, and also you can let your friends borrow these tools afterwards or something, or just keep doing it like I am. Flip a Focus here and there, buy it, sell it, fix it, drive it, whatever. They're awesome cars. This is just a slight problem, so save the cars. So the clutch is out, and look at all this nice dust that came out. Probably a good idea to wear a mask at this point. That's a pretty good mountain of dust. There's dust everywhere. I'm gonna take that outside and blow it out with a bunch of air here shortly. But here's the forks. You can imagine how they get stuck with all of this dust in there. There's little bearings, there's rollers, and they move back and forth. And a lot of times I've seen people put too much grease when they replace them, and the dust gets stuck to the grease more, and it balls it up and they get stuck. So once I think this was actuator, or yeah, clutch A being stuck. So clutch A is the one on top here. So this is the one that was sticking. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove A and B, and we're gonna try to see if we can get it to stick, so I could show exactly what's happening. But this is supposed to be clean. All of this is supposed to be like that color, and all that dust just came out. There's tons of dust in there. It's everywhere. But the clutch is pretty much new. There's plenty of life left in this clutch. You can see the discs from the side. It'll be hard to show on video, but you can see the discs in there, and they're looking good. So yeah, so basically what happens is these forks, they begin getting stuck, or they move slower, and it starts burning the clutch, creates more dust, and that happens. So let me remove the actuators, and then we'll go from there. So this comes in that tool set the clutch removal. This goes where the actuator A and B is, and basically you just put this in and start turning, and the forks are supposed to move. So oh, you see that? It got stuck for a second. So that's already a problem. Look at that. So it pushes the clutch, boom, it's stuck. It's stuck. It's not going back. I'm not holding it or anything. There it goes. See? That was sticking already. So it's not as bad, but if that happens once in a while, it triggers a bunch of, you know, TCM codes or engine codes and stuff like that. The car's confused. It's like I'm trying to switch gears, but nothing's happening. So that time it didn't stick. See, it doesn't stick every time. Yeah, so that was like a delay. So A is sticking for sure. Oh, B's even worse, honestly. Like, it's stuck right now. So what I'm gonna do is remove them completely out of the transmission, clean this up, clean those up with brake cleaner, dry them up really good, put some lube on them, and it'll be good to go. So that's the problem in these transmissions. I'm gonna show some of the process, like cleaning and stuff, but I'm probably not gonna show much more. Like, I'll show you how to reinstall the clutch and everything like that, but there's videos out there for that, so let's keep going. And so this is what we're dealing with. This is supposed to be clean, and as you can see, there's all kinds of buildup on where the rollers should be. That's all supposed to be spotless. The rollers are supposed to be moving back and forth with a spring tension, and a lot of times the seal is leaking, and that doesn't help either. But in this case, it's all dry. It's just a lot of buildup from the clutch wearing out. I guess maybe the clutch was worn before and they replaced the clutch and didn't clean any of this up. Also, you gotta check on this guy right here. This guy looks pretty rough too. So all of this needs to be cleaned up. The bearings are still okay. It just needs to be cleaned up. It's all packed with clutch dust. So all of this will get cleaned up. So these are the forks here. I think this is the fork A. Look at this. All of that's supposed to be clean. There's all kinds of buildup. Yeah. So I usually take 1 to 2 cans of brake cleaner and just start blasting away. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's do it. So all the parts have been cleaned up and they're all working properly. This is fork A. It's all clean. I mean, there are some cases where these fall apart, but I've only had it once to where it wasn't cleanable or repairable. It just fell apart. So yes, sometimes this will not work and you have to replace these. And a lot of times They sell this as a kit, you know, the forks and the clutch and everything. So I mean, if it's worth it to you, you can actually remove it, buy the kit. It's like $700 for the new clutch, which comes preset, and it comes with the new forks. So if it's worth it to you to do that, that's fine. You can do that. But this video is actually showing you how you can fix your car without spending any money besides the tools. So either way you want to go, I mean, you already got the transmission out. It would make sense to replace everything, but I've inspected everything and everything looks good. Everything is clean. So now what I want to do is I like to put a very light amount of grease over here where the rollers are, the bearings, and a little bit here, and just reassemble everything with a light amount of Loctite and torque everything down. So from this point, it's all just assembly. So stay tuned. So once you have your forks back in there and torqued, I'm not even sure what the torque spec is, to be honest. I just tighten it as hard as I can without breaking the bolts off. I'm sure there's torque specs out there. I can look it up on the Ford thing, but I mean, I have enough experience with these to where I know how tight it needs to be. So now what you want to do is you want to test, make sure the fork moves. And it does. What I'm doing is I'm pushing it out and then I release it and it goes back. Earlier it was getting stuck and it was like tight. So this does work. Let me check the other one. So there's B. Boom. Goes back. Goes back right away. So this does work. I mean, like I said, in some cases you might need to replace the forks, but that's very rare. Out of like 20, I think one fork was actually bad, and it was partially my fault. But so all you have to do is clean everything up, lube everything up a little bit, and I'm just using, I think there's special grease, but I'm just using like the brake pad grease, and I'm putting it just a very light amount, because if you put a lot, keep in mind that the clutch dust will stick to it more and it'll be even worse. So just a very, very light amount of grease. And some people put a lot and it actually makes it worse and they don't last long. So I mean, there's no like permanent fix for this because there's always going to be dust, but I mean, this is just, you know, this is good for a long time. Like, this engine will probably blow in this car before this clutch goes out or has issues. As far as this, I mean, the TCM could fail, the actuators could fail, but as far as this is all good and done. I believe that whoever replaced this clutch previously didn't clean anything or didn't service anything. These forks, they look original. The clutch looks new. So I believe someone just popped a new clutch in and crossed their fingers and hope for the best. But don't skip this step. This is a very important step. The next important step is setting the clutch. Let's go do that. Okay, so we have the clutch set and it is time to drop it in. So you just put a little bit of grease right here for the bearing that we're going to be pressing in. You want to try not to move the transmission so these don't move. They want to stay in place. And of course there's a tool to lift this, but I just lift it with my fingers like that and drop it in. There we go. So now it's sitting in there, and this bearing here needs to be pressed in, so that's where the tool comes in play right now. So once you have the tool in place with the spacer, you just turn this by hand. It goes in very easy. So you press it in. You could put a socket on it, but I just do it by hand. It just goes super easy. And once you can see that you can put that C-clip back on, you back this out, remove the plate, put the clip back in, and then go from there and just reassemble everything just like it was. So let's go. So now all I have to do is engage the clutch. That means I use this tool that we were testing the forks with, put in the extension, and turn fork A counterclockwise 14 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that released clutch A. Same thing with clutch B. Wish I had more room in here, but 14 times. 1, 2, 3. And you can hear it while I'm doing that. Clutch is now set, and now I just put the actuators back in, and they also recommend putting some grease on the actuators here, which are already been greased at some point. So I'll just wipe that old grease off. And see, in this case, the transmission, electronic part of the transmission, everything is working flawlessly. It was mechanically getting stuck. So we just put a little bit of grease. All right, and now the transmission can go back in. Any questions? Just kidding. So yeah, everything gets put back the way it came out. I'll have to find a few bolts that were missing, and once the transmission is back in the car, I reassemble everything, connect the battery, and once the vehicle is on its wheels, I'm gonna show you. I don't think you have to do this step, I've done it with and without. I think the vehicle will relearn the clutch on its own after a good drive. You just got to take it easy at first and it'll learn itself. But there, with the scan tool, you can hook up and basically force the relearn with the scan tool or IDS if you have access to an IDS, or with like a launch or a snap-on scan tool. So I'm gonna put this thing back in and hopefully finish this up tonight. So just like that, the car is assembled and back on its feet. So right now I have the battery connected. I'm gonna go ahead and check the codes, clear the codes, and do a relearn, and then take it on a test drive tomorrow morning because it's getting late. Okay, so it looks like there's no codes stored or anything, so I'm gonna go into the TCM and special functions, test clutch. So right now it's gonna go through testing the clutch procedure, and then we'll move on from there. You can actually hear the clutch engaging. That's going through the test procedure. That's a good sign. Clutch test complete. So basically the next step is to do a shift drum and then clutch relearn. We did the clutch test and now we gotta do a clutch relearn. I believe the shift drum we can do now, but a clutch relearn actually needs to be done after a drive, or the vehicle has to be at full operating temperature, so that's gonna have to be done tomorrow. But I want to make sure that the shift drum procedure goes through before I end this night. Test completed, so I guess I'll wait till tomorrow and get this thing out of the garage, get it to full temperature, and then do a clutch relearn and then a test drive. So stay tuned for the test drive. Next morning here, let's see if this thing starts and get it up to temperature, and then we can do the clutch relearn. Last night we checked, there's no codes. Started flawlessly, no lights on the dash. Let's take it outside and get it warmed up. Okay, so it drives forward and backwards, no problem. This is before the relearn. I'm gonna drive it to the bottom of the driveway and do a relearn. So there we have it. Learning succeeded, and it shows you the millimeters. So now I hit OK, turn ignition off, wait 45 seconds, and I'm good to drive. So let's see how this thing drives. First official test drive with the transmission cleaned out. I'm gonna take it easy at first, let it go through all the gears, and then we'll drive it normal. It's shifting smooth so far. I like it. So this video was sponsored by me, so hit like and subscribe, and hopefully this video helps. I know people are freaking out about these Fiestas and Focuses and are paying a ton of money to the dealer or shops to replace transmissions and stuff like that. As you can see, I didn't buy anything besides the tools, which I already had for previous rebuilds. So if you want to do this, all you need is some tools. Maybe some friend has a tool that you can borrow, and that way it doesn't cost you anything. But stay tuned for more videos like this. If you have any questions, follow me on Instagram, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. So this thing drives amazing. I'm gonna end it here, so later.